All right, hello everybody. Thank you all for tuning in. My name is Jaden Armont. I'm here with my boy Anthony Pasquiola. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Passiola, close,
All
close.
right. All right. I was close enough. Anyway, we are the undrafted rookie free agents, sports writers at the Miami Heat, Fan Nation under Sports Illustrated. And today we're talking about the Miami Heat and everything going on around the NBA. So, Anthony, let's just dive right in.
So starting off with the Heat this week, a lot of rumors have been spreading about the Damian Lillard trade per usual, and one name that's been brought up more than normal over this past week is Caleb Martin, and the fact that the Heat have been more hesitant to include him in the deal than we first thought. Do you think the Heat should look to trade him, look to hold on to him? What's your take on that?
It's like it's so hard because if the trade does eventually happen and Lillard isn't the piece that we expected him to be, we're gonna look back in hindsight and be like, oh, well, we just traded the guy who basically got us to the finals. I mean, he was the most consistent player in the Eastern Conference Finals. Um, and a lot of people argued that he should have won the MVP over Jimmy Butler. I mean, obviously, Butler was a better player throughout the entire playoffs, but when you're talking about consistency and you talk about that series alone, I do think Caleb Martin was the piece that propelled us over the edge. Just had, I mean, he was our starting power forward most of the year. That didn't work out, but the fact that he was willing to play not only as a starter but outside of his role um, for the majority of the season, and then have the playoff series that he had, it does increase his value, which is why I think Portland would want him in the trade. So I mean, although I would really like to get Damian Lillard, I understand the hesitancy to trade Caleb Martin.
Yeah, and in every trade, you give and you take. So sacrifices are going to have to be made on Miami's end, especially if Portland's not interested in Hero, which, is understandable because they have Scoot over there. They have Shaden Sharp. They have Anthony Simons. Why,
Right.
why, why do they need Hero? So I feel like it's really just a give and take situation, and we'll just have to see what they do.
Right. No, I completely agree.
And, keeping on that same topic with the Heat and Blazers, a lot of reports have come out within the past few days of after, I would say, a couple weeks of pretty much silence in the situation. It sounds like the Heat are going to pick up trade talks again before the start of training camp. How important do you think it is for the Heat to maybe acquire Lillard before training camp gets started? How do you think that will play into the next season?
I mean, I think it's crucial. Like getting him accustomed to the team, building those both on court and off court relationships, getting into the system. How is he going to, play alongside whoever the other starting guard would be, which I think if we do have to trade Hero, to a third team, it would probably be Jay Rich in the starting lineup alongside him. So just how will he mold with him? How will he mold with Jimmy Butler? Because I mean, they're both high level scorers, which is great, but like now does Jimmy become the number two option on the team, or does Damian Lillard sit back and let Butler continue to do his thing? I don't think that's going to happen. I think if we do acquire Lillard, he is going to be the number one scorer. And Jimmy will take a back seat. Well, not a back seat, but he won't have to have like the, 40, 50 point performances that he had in the playoffs. Um, so yeah, I think to answer your question, I think it's very important for him, like us to get him before training camp.
And as you were saying about, who's going to be the number one scorer on a team with, two top tier scorers around the league, I feel like we saw a really good perspective of what Butler does alongside another star when he was in Philly alongside Embiid.
Right.
I think that worked out really well. And, if he stuck around in Philadelphia, I could have 100% seen them at least reaching the finals. But, Kawhi Leonard kind of ruined that in the second round.
Yeah. Yeah. And then more to that point, Bam, he doesn't have to have the pressure of being the number two scorer because he just hasn't really been consistent enough. He could focus, strictly on defense and rebounding.
Yeah, that's really important, especially considering, all that pressure he has not only on the defensive side at only 6'9", but all that rebounding.
Right.
And one thing I actually want to bring up, and we can cut to the clip in a second, is I had the pleasure of interviewing Heat forward Kevin Love earlier this week. And, you know, the first thing I kind of asked him about was when he first came to the Heat around midway through last season, who were the guys that he was looking to first make relationships with? And I think he did a really good job of explaining, he wanted to make sure he first got in with those veteran guys like Jimmy and Udonis Haslam, but he also made sure to reach out to a guy like Bam or Tyler, who are on the younger side, but still play a large leadership role from the team.
Right. Yeah, I actually I watched a bit of that and I that part stuck out with me because Kevin is a veteran guy, so him getting to know guys like Jimmy Butler, Udonis Haslam, Kyle Lowry, who he's battled in the East over the past couple of years, in those Raptors Cavs playoff games. So yeah, I mean, and I think that's part of why I emphasize getting Dame early so that he can have that same like uh you know getting to know the veteran guys as well.
Absolutely. And I would say all things considered, this was a relatively quiet week for the Heat. But in terms of the rest of the league, it was pretty eventful. I think the top of the list around the rest of the league has to be Team USA. Falling short in the FIBA World Cup, ended up in fourth place, which was pretty disappointing for USA standards in big tournaments. But what everybody's talking about is this revamped team that could be coming to Paris next year. I believe it was Shams who reported that LeBron has already kind of made a verbal commitment, along with a lot of other guys, Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry. I mean, you have to imagine that team brings home the gold pretty easily, right?
Yeah, I mean, like we barely lost to Germany, right? And we were sending guys. I mean, like if if we're talking about Team USA standard, those are like third string guys, you know, budding superstars. So if we bring out LeBron, like you said, Steph Curry, KD, Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum, I mean, there's just not going to be enough to counter all that. But yeah, it was very underwhelming, especially having Dylan Brooks put 39 on us was kind of the icing on the cake.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at that roster and you just can't imagine any other country competing with us. Just really won't happen. But even outside the NBA, the NFL season just started up and we're both pretty avid NFL fans, I would say. What are a few takeaways you had from week one?
So staying in Miami, Tua looked really good. Tua and Tyreek Hill looked really, really good. Yeah, and now that Aaron Rodgers is officially out for the year, I think that the Dolphins have a shot at being, playing second in the division or even first because Buffalo doesn't really look that good. I mean, Josh Allen looked terrible. And he's a quarterback that I always defend, but like, I mean, the turnovers I can't justify.
Yeah, it feels like every year Josh Allen comes out and he has at least two or three of these games where he just constantly turns the ball over. So, I expect Buffalo to pick things back up soon, but I don't know. Tua did look very good, as you said.
He did.
Mhm. But, one team that didn't look so hot, or two teams, I should say, was Kansas City and the Eagles, both Super Bowl teams. I can understand Kansas City because, without Kelsey, without Chris Jones, we should see both of them back this week. I believe Kelsey is still questionable, but is expected to play. I think if we see those two back against Jacksonville this upcoming week, they'll certainly, win that game, have a bounce back week. Everybody will kind of quiet down about them. But mainly the Eagles, man, like that offense did not look like its explosive self from last year. And I think a large part of that has to do with losing their offensive and defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean that and like they lost they lost CJ Gardner Johnson, they lost Ndamukong Suh, they lost Javon Hargrave, who is like one of the best defensive tackles in the league, and he went to the 49ers. Like that's like the one team that in the NFC that you cannot like you can't give them up to.
Yeah, I really, on the offensive side, I think like you look at a guy like Devonta Smith, who I think had like 4 receptions for 12 yards, or really disappointing games from that receiving core that was pretty heavily considered to be in the top three. Obviously, you look to Miami, they're pretty clear the number one with Tyreek and Waddle over there.
Right.
Right behind them, I think AJ Brown and Devontae Smith definitely make a case for number two in there.
Yeah, I mean it was like it was very underwhelming. They better be thankful that their defense and their special teams played well because otherwise that I think the Patriots would have won that game.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately for me as a Patriots fan, they didn't. But that one stung a bit. And I think, the final two takeaways I had from week one were one team that I was pretty low on and they proved me right was the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, they won 13 one-score games last season. You just can't
Right.
repeat that kind of success. And just to go out there and lose to, I believe, Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield, that's not a strong start.
No, yeah, I mean I completely expected them to take a step back just because um like you said they won so many one score games and you can't replicate that. Plus losing Dalvin Cook, they lost another big time defensive player. I can't remember which one, but yeah, so I definitely expect them to take a step back.
Yeah, they lost Patrick Peterson in that secondary.
Oh, yep.
That
That's
secondary
that's
looked
who I was thinking about.
that secondary looks scary.
Yeah. But speaking of Patrick Peterson, he got burnt all game by Brock Purdy. We're not gonna talk about that.
Yeah, and then I mean the final one I would just want to bring up is the Dallas Cowboys winning 40-0. I mean, that was a pathetic performance by the Giants, especially for their standards coming into this year, looking to be a wild card team. Can't really expect them to be a divisional winner with the Eagles and the Cowboys there, but for a team that was expected to push for the playoffs to come out and lose 40-0 week one isn't a joke.
Yeah, I mean, like I've always thought that Daniel Jones should have never got that contract, $40 million a year for a guy who just, I mean, I just think he's a bad quarterback. I really do. And he proved it, but that loss just wasn't all on him though. For as much as I get on him, the special teams was outclassed. The defense was smothering the Giants offense. Like they just couldn't do anything all game.
Mm, absolutely. And one last thing about the Heat to mention that's a little less on the court related is earlier today, leak got posted. I'm not totally sure how reliable it is, but there were these picture of these jerseys that were a potential concept going into next season. I don't know if you got a chance to take a look at them, but they were a black jersey that said Heat culture on it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that perfectly describes the Heat organization. So, what does the Heat culture mean to you?
The Heat culture just means like being unselfish, focus, like being focused and willing to contribute to the team effort, which is
Mhm,
why I feel like players like Kyrie Irving or James Harden, as great as they are, their constant drama and sometimes their selfishness just wouldn't fit well with Heat culture.
mhm. And playing your role there has shown so crucial to so many guys. You look at a guy like Kendrick Nunn just a few years ago, played a perfect role in Miami, played it perfectly into that culture, got the contract somewhere else, and it just kind of fell apart from there.
Right.
And I'm not as concerned with Gabe Vincent this offseason, even though he is, in a sense, directly following in Nunn's footsteps going to the Lakers. But I think Vincent provides a little more like scrappiness and a little more on the defensive end.
Yes, I agree with that.
And, one other thing that was just absurd to me that I saw earlier was Kai Jones on the Hornets. He's been over social media the last few weeks, but today he made some specific ridiculous comments. So the first thing he said is the new version of himself can match MVP and defensive player of the year levels. So, you look at guys like Jaren Jackson Jr., Marcus Smart, the last two winners, and you just have to think he's joking.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think he's just like he's going through something. But yeah, I don't know. Like guys, I can appreciate being confident and talking up a big game, but that's just insanely large expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. But, this is the part where I really think you'll get a kick out of this. So he also feels he can take on LeBron and Shaquille O'Neal in a one-on-one and considers himself superior to his own teammates, LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller.
I did see that, and that's again, I'll just never understand. Number one, comparing like trying to say that you beat somebody in a different era, like Shaquille O'Neal, um, or like just aspiring to that level. Like if he would have said like a smaller name, I'd be like, okay, but LeBron James, like I don't get that. And bad mouthing your own teammates, I'll never understand that either.
Yeah, that's the opposite of heat culture, man. You never see him in a heat form.
Nuh-uh.
But I think the last thing I kind of want to wrap up today is a comment from a former Heat player, Markieff Morris.
Hmm.
So leading up to the finals last season, there was considered to be some bad blood between the Nuggets and Heat because of the incident that happened between Markieff and Jokic, I believe a year prior, where he shoved him in the back. And Morris just decided that he was going to bring this back up, and he said, "What y'all call it, snuck? Yeah, it was a sucker shot. He's going to get his though." I don't really see a need to bring up this situation again. It was in the past. I mean, Jokic doesn't care, if we're being honest.
Hmm.
But to go out of your way to threaten a guy is just a little absurd to me.
Yeah, it is a little absurd, considering it happened a year and a half ago. Like it happened such a long time ago. Which I can kind of understand. It ended his season, so he has the right to be a little bit salty about it. But um, I mean, if I'm revisiting the clip, technically, like uh, I don't know, like I don't know all the specifics of it, but it looked like Morris, initiated it and then he kind of turned his back. I'm not justifying Jokic in it, but it's just like you got to be prepared for anything. I feel like.
Absolutely. And wrapping up today's episode, you got to wish a happy birthday to the Heat superstar Jimmy Butler.
Yes, sir.
34 today, I believe, 35.
34. Yep.
34, absolutely.
Yep. I mean, he has revived Miami basketball. Like literally since the moment he's come here, we have had more success than, ever since LeBron left.
Mhm. That was a really rough patch in Miami's history. Went through those 4 years with LeBron, Bosh, and Wade, had four straight finals appearances, went through like a little 5 year, struggle. And then Butler comes in and just immediately puts you back into that title contenders.
Right. And I think that alone, propels him to the Hall of Fame conversations.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect him unless he wins that championship to be first ballot, but I do think at this point in his career, the two finals appearances, everything else he's done, I think it gets him there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
I agree with you.
Well, that wraps up today's episode number 2. of the
Yes.
Undrafted Rookie Free Agents podcast. Thank you all for watching. I'm Anthony Pasiola here with Jaden Armont, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, sir. See y'all next week.